Enjoy this conversation with me, Maureen Kimani, every Friday from 9 a.m. on our Health Corner show here at Capuchin TV. Your health is your wealth.
A very good morning to you, dear viewer. Thank you for joining on this exclusive interview with me, Maureen Kimani. And it is a program brought to you by Capuchin TV in collaboration with LifeSite News, a Canadian conservative anti-abortion advocacy website and news publication. Well, today we cover a very quite interesting topic, and that is abortion. And we are diving into a topic that has long been a subject of intense debate and passionate discussion. Well, that is abortion we're talking about. It is a complex issue that covers medical, ethical, and societal dimensions. And today we explore it from various angles and empathy and understanding. Well, and I'm not going to do this alone, because in the studio I'm being joined by a very special guest, of which some of you know him as Dr. Wahome, but I'll give him time to introduce himself so that he can tell us more about himself and what he does. And in case if you have thoughts or experiences that you'd like to share, don't hesitate to reach out to us on 0717 424 866, or you can use our SMS number that is 21760, or you can leave a comment, your question on our YouTube and Facebook page, that is Capuchin TV. A very good morning once again. Welcome to the conversation. Very good morning, Dr.
Morning, morning.
How are you doing?
I am very well, and I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you here.
Yes.
Actually, it's the very first time you're coming to our studio,
Yes,
right?
I've never been to Capuchin before.
Wow, that's very good, because this month we're marking our 6th anniversary since Capuchin was started. So you're a special guest here, and thank you for making time. Well, because it's the very first time you are coming here to the studio, and as per our tradition, kindly introduce yourself to our viewers.
Very well. My name is Wahome. I am a child of God. I am a married man, and I have 3 children. And I have 2 grandchildren. And I am a gynecologist by training. I finished my first degree in medicine in 1991, and my second degree in 2000, where I mastered in obstetrics and gynecology. So in essence, I have given my life to looking after the woman, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
So I'll be speaking as a doctor, as a father, and in all those aspects as we discuss this particular subject.
Thank you. And actually I find something quite interesting, because 2 of my friends asked me yesterday on the picture that you have on your website, are you going to have Barack Obama tomorrow on your show? Because you kind of have similarities. What do you say that? Do people confuse you for him?
I have been told that, but I think Barack Obama looks like me. Yes.
Very true. Of course, he's a great man, and so do you. All right. Well, and we say that choice matters, and of course, we're empowering personal decision right here on Capuchin TV on this topic about abortion. Well, as we talk about abortion, what's the difference between abortion in a medical term perspective and in English version?
Yes, the challenge is when we discuss abortion and we are not clear what we are saying to each other, then it causes a lot of confusion. And most of the time you cannot get consensus. So when the lawyers talk about abortion, when the doctors talk about abortion, when the people who are medically lay, who are also not lawyers, talk about abortion, everybody seems to think differently. So for instance, if I said Mary had a miscarriage in a normal conversation in a party, and I say Mary had a miscarriage, or I say Mary had an abortion, the way it is perceived is different. People understand miscarriage to be spontaneous, it's just an accident, something went wrong. And they seem to understand abortion to mean somebody induced the loss. Somebody actively destroyed the pregnancy. When you talk to the doctors, and I'm talking to my colleagues, and I say Mary had an abortion, then they would ask, was it spontaneous, was it induced, so that you know whether it was a natural loss. So you'd find if I speak to my patient and I tell them, oh, what you're going through is an abortion, they get offended, because then they immediately say I didn't do anything. But from a doctor's perspective, all I meant was that it is a natural loss. So the best way to approach the topic then is to say what we mean. Let's just say that abortion is bringing a pregnancy to an end. So the word abortion in English, we can abort this program, for instance. It just means bring to an end prematurely. You start a process, if you stop it prematurely, then that is an abortion. So bringing a pregnancy to an end prematurely would then be what an abortion would be in this discussion, that there is an active involvement in bringing a pregnancy to an end. As a doctor, I am allowed to bring a pregnancy to an end in order to save the mother, or to save the baby, or to save both. And that would be considered moral and would be considered ethical. But then somebody else may want to bring a pregnancy to an end by deliberately killing the baby. And that would then be considered immoral and unethical. So long as we are clear what we're discussing, then we'll be fine.
Okay. And of course, so many people confuse abortion and sometimes they term it as murder. What's your take on that?
So if you end a pregnancy by deliberately killing the baby, then whatever you want to call that, because the lawyers will argue whether it is murder, whether it's manslaughter, whether the thing is, you have taken the life of the unborn child, then that is medically unethical. So the issue is not to save the mother, is not to save the baby, is to kill the baby, then that is not medically acceptable. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Wahome, for that clarification. And as we move on, is abortion common health intervention as alluded by the WHO guidelines?
The famous WHO. Yes, now let's put WHO in perspective. WHO gives guidelines. Now, in as far as guidelines are concerned in discussing my practice or guiding my practice, then there are several levels of authority. Now, the first level of authority that we have as human beings is the conscience. That inherently inside each one of us, regardless of whether you're a person of faith or whether you have a religion or not, there is an inherent knowledge of good and evil. It is not perfect, but if I steal from you, you'll feel bad. And you'll find that in most civilizations, then the concept of common good, or what you would say the golden rule, do unto others as you would wish them do to you. So that's the first level, that the conscience existed for as long as humanity existed, even before written law. The second thing is the inherent knowledge that life has dignity. So if I was to meet a very rich man who's very famous in this country and has done a lot of good work, and I killed him, then everybody would know I've done something wrong. But why is it that his life has value? What if there was a poor man who lived outside my house, making the place untidy and always begging? What if I killed that person? It would still be wrong, but he's not rich, yes? What if he was blind, he was living with a disability of blindness, he couldn't hear, maybe his legs or his hands are withered, and I killed him? It would still be wrong. If it was a small baby who's just been born, doesn't own anything, hasn't achieved anything in life, if I kill them, then it would still be wrong. So what is this that gives human life value? It is not your wealth. It is not your physical state. It is not how small you are, how big you are. It is again inherent that we must respect human life. And whether that life is inside or outside of the mother, it doesn't change the fact that it is human life. Then the next level is what we call the Hippocratic Oath. Hippocrates, who's considered the father of Western medicine, lived 450 years before Christ. So the Hippocratic Oath pre-exists even the Bible and the Quran. And in that oath that we take as doctors, it is clear that we must respect life. It is clear that we must not kill the baby. And this was many years before any of the constitutions we are having existed. Then from that we derive medical ethics. And it has 3 pillars, it has 4 pillars. The first pillar is that I should do good, which means I must understand what is good and evil. Also, I must avoid doing harm, which again means I must have a moral foundation. Then the autonomy, that I will respect my patient. That despite being the specialist and despite knowing medicine, they would still have to make the final decision about their care. And that I'll keep the information I know secret, and I'll be truthful when I'm telling them what it is that they need to do. And then, of course, finally, there is justice, that I'll treat all my patients the same regardless of their social status or wealth. That's the other level that guides my practice. Then after that level, then we come to the national laws. And in this country, then we have a constitution.
Exactly.
And one of the national values of Kenyans that is overlooked by the Western world is that we declare that we believe in the Almighty God of all creation. In our constitution, in the preamble, in our national anthem. And that forms a very strong basis of the moral foundation of which any doctor practicing here would. Then there is the Article 26 that then clearly says life starts at conception. It is not that the law is the one that is giving life. It is just recognizing that that's a scientific truth. And then that any termination of a pregnancy or bringing a pregnancy to an end as we defined abortion is the opinion of a trained health professional, and that he must be guided by certain things. It is after that that we then have policies of government, and then the guidelines of WHO would come right at the bottom there. Now, if anything WHO says is inconsistent with any of the others that are above it, then it is of no consequence and is to be ignored. So WHO can say what it wants. WHO has an opinion. The Kenya Catholic doctors have an opinion. So it is important for doctors to know where to place WHO guidelines. So there may be some things in WHO guidelines that may work in the US or may work in Canada that would not be acceptable here. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Doctor. And I love that you mentioned about valuing about human dignity.
Yes.
And there's a movement that has been ongoing, the pro-life. I'm sure you have heard of it exactly. Let's talk about, is it true that 6 out of 10 unintended pregnancies result to an induced abortion?
Is interesting because when you talk about unintended pregnancy, you're no longer speaking biology. It's a social term that causes a lot of confusion, even in practice. Now, simple biology says that sexual intercourse is like mating in animals. It is designed to deliver the male seed into the woman. And the woman simply takes this seed and then would incubate a baby and give birth. And that is simple biology. So when you have 2 full-grown adults who come and say that they had sexual intercourse and they're pregnant and they're surprised, then you really wonder whether we are serious. It is actually, it's idiotic. It should be clear to everyone that sexual intercourse, one of the natural outcomes, is pregnancy. In fact, in medical practice, if you have sexual intercourse regularly for a year and you don't conceive, we consider that illness. It is called infertility. There is a problem. So the way we need to understand these things is that if somebody is not ready to be a parent, then they have a moral responsibility to avoid sexual intercourse. But if you do engage and get pregnant, then don't say you're surprised. So that's why some of those terms WHO uses are very strange. And they are social terms, they are not medical terms. And the other thing is that when the studies are done to check on how pregnancy is lost, if a patient came to me losing a pregnancy and I asked her what happens, and she said she fell in the bathroom or nothing happened, she just started bleeding. Beyond that, there is no way of knowing whether what they're saying is true or not.
Sure.
And beyond that, it is not necessary for me to know what happened. What I do is I have a patient who is bleeding and she is pregnant. My business is to take care of her. So those figures, what we should be discussing is not the projected figures, it is what is real. Now, the commonest cause of maternal mortality in this country, the commonest cause is bleeding during childbirth. That's the first killer of women in this country. The second one is hypertensive diseases in pregnancy.
And let me cut you short.
Yes.
Why is that?
You see, any woman during the point of delivery, there is bleeding that would happen, okay? Because the placenta has to separate. So the baby has to come out with its placenta and everything that is associated with the baby, so that the woman's uterus can contract and the bleeding stops. So we know that a woman will bleed naturally during childbirth.
Okay.
Now, if her level of blood was not adequate during the time of the pregnancy and she comes already in anemia, then it means even the normal blood loss that would happen during pregnancy can actually be a threat to her life. Sometimes parts of the placenta would remain, sometimes there are tears within the birth passage. All those would contribute to the risk of bleeding. So bleeding is the commonest cause of mortality. The second one is hypertensive disorders of pregnancy. The third one is infections that may occur after childbirth or after losing a pregnancy. And then the fourth one is obstructed labor, where a woman is not able to deliver the baby and cannot access cesarean services. The natural loss of pregnancy or miscarriage, which we also talk about as abortion or spontaneous abortion, then becomes the fifth cause of death. So if we were to be serious about taking care of loss of life, then the bleeding and all those others then come first. Now, when it comes to pregnancy loss, it is access to what we call post-abortion care that is important. If a woman is bleeding, she's lost the pregnancy, part of it has come out, part has remained, it's very important that the uterus is emptied quickly to stop the bleeding. And all that, those are things that can be done. Now, when you confuse that spontaneous loss and you bring in the issue of whether it was induced or not, the thing is that at the point the patient comes to me, it doesn't matter how that loss was initiated. What matters is that she needs medical attention. Yes.
Okay, and before we take a break, because you've mentioned about causes of maternal death and morbidities, maybe in your course of expertise, tell us about some of the effects of unsafe abortions.
Again, we need to clarify. There is in medicine nothing like safe and unsafe abortion. Those are social terms, again developed by WHO and others. In medicine, we talk about a spontaneous loss or an induced loss. Okay? Now, safe and unsafe abortion, by definition by WHO, is about terminating an unwanted pregnancy by somebody who is not skilled or in an environment where doesn't meet the minimum medical standards. That is not a medical diagnosis, it's not a medical procedure. You are deliberately killing the baby, and you have not been trained, and you're doing it in a place that is not meeting medical standards. And therefore then safe abortion would be killing the baby, but you are trained in termination of pregnancy and in a safe environment. Now, if you listen to both, you'll understand that the definition is about the skill of the person doing the procedure and where it is done. It is not about the safety of the mother. It is not about the safety of the unborn child. And both of them deliberately kill the child. So in as far as medical ethics is concerned, both of them are unethical. So that you cannot solve the problem of people killing children in an untrained place, in a dirty place, by killing the children in a clean place by somebody who is trained. If we talk about just the pregnancy loss and how it is managed, any mother who is bleeding and is pregnant must understand it is an emergency, even if it is just a little bleeding, because you don't know whether it will increase or not. So the message to the mothers out there is, if you are pregnant and you start bleeding, then it is very important you urgently go for medical care. And that the facility that you go to, if it cannot manage what it is you are suffering from, should quickly be able to refer you. To my doctor colleagues and institutions of health, including the religious institutions of health, the question of whether that termination was induced by the mother or by somebody else should not change the fact that she needs to be treated. It is important that we address the problem the mother has come with, and that is take care of her and do what it is you can to stabilize the situation.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wahome, for that. And I think because you've been able to put effort on the introduction part of abortion, the way it's supposed to be defined, and what should mothers do in case they see some of the signs like bleeding that you have just mentioned. And you touched a bit on the constitution of Kenya, that is in terms of abortion as far as is concerned. But we're going to take a very short break. When we come back, I'm sure you have a lot to share about on this topic that is abortion. And of course, maybe you can tell us, because I understand there was a case that you mentioned, or we're going to talk about of Malindi. It was a very young girl, and she was involved in such a scenario. And maybe you can tell us what should parents do, of course, by taking care of the young people, because these abortions sometimes it occurs to young, the youth and young adults. And maybe you can tell us what should parents do, and of course the society, because there's a certain perspective and a view from the societal dimension. And with that, we're going to take a very short break. And still, in case you have thoughts or experiences that you'd love to share, you can send that to us on the numbers that I mentioned, and I'm sure you can see them down on your screen, and we'll be able to get back to you. But before, let's take a very short break. We'll be right back.
Enjoy this conversation with me, Maureen Kimani, every Friday from 9 a.m. on our Health Corner show here at Capuchin TV. Your health is your wealth. Capuchin TV.
Tumetoka mbali, bado tuko mbali, na tunaenda wapi? Mbali.
Endelea kutazama Capuchin TV, huduma Katoliki ya uinjilishaji.
à igreja do meu bairro, vejo somente pessoas mais velhas. A igreja agora é coisa de velhos?
La iglesia no es un club para la tercera edad, como tampoco es un club juvenil. Si se convierte en algo de viejos, va a morir. San Juan Pablo II decía que si vivís con los jóvenes, también vos te volvés joven. Y la iglesia necesita a los jóvenes para no envejecer.
Dear Pope Francis, why did you choose the theme Mary Arose and Went with Haste for this World Youth Day?
Porque María, en cuanto sabe que va a ser la Madre de Dios, no se queda allí tomándose un selfie o presumiendo. Lo primero que hace es ponerse en camino a toda prisa para servir, para ayudar. También ustedes tienen que aprender de ella a ponerse en camino para ayudar a los demás.
Attendez-vous des James de Lisbonne?
Me gustaría ver en Lisboa una semilla del mundo del futuro. Un mundo donde el amor esté en el centro, donde nos podamos sentir hermanas y hermanos. Estamos en guerra, necesitamos otra cosa, un mundo que no tenga miedo a testimoniar el Evangelio, un mundo con alegría, porque los cristianos, si no tenemos alegría, no somos creíbles, no nos cree nadie.
Rezemos para que a Jornada Mundial da Juventude em Lisboa
Will help us young people to set out in this journey.
En témoin de l'évangile par notre propre vie.
Enjoy this conversation with me, Maureen Kimani, every Friday from 9 a.m. on our Health Corner show here at Capuchin TV. Your health is your wealth.
Welcome back, dear viewer, on this conversation brought to you by Capuchin TV in partnership with Live Site News, and I'm your host, Maureen Kimani. And in the studio, we have a guest that is Dr. Wahome, who is an obstetrician, gynecologist, and a chairman, Kenya Catholic Doctors Association, that is KCDA. And in case you're joining us right here, our topic is about abortion, and of which has been able to shed more light on these topic, and welcome back to the conversation once again. Karibu sana. Welcome back, Daktari.
Asante.
Yes, let's continue with the conversation as I mentioned before we went for the break. Let's talk about in your area of expertise as a gynecologist. What does the Constitution of Kenya law state when it comes to abortion?
Well, the term abortion is used in Article 26(4). Of the Constitution under the Bill of Rights. But the first part of the Constitution, the 26(1), clearly states that the life of a person begins at conception. Now, that is a scientific fact. And the reason why it is special is that Kenya is one of, I think, I'm not aware of any other constitution that clearly states that the life of a person begins at conception. And when that is not recorded in the Constitution, then there is a lot of issues about when personhood should be declared to a person. So you find that lawyers would argue that after a child is born and they are registered, then they have acquired legal personhood. Okay, so you have a birth certificate, and if you die, then there is a death certificate that is given, and that you would then achieve personhood only after birth and registration. We don't have that confusion in this country. And that is one of the biggest challenges we are having with people who want to come and apply laws from elsewhere or policies and guidelines like WHO without considering our local statutes. Now, if a child is a person who is below the age of 18 and the life of a person begins at conception, then what do you call this person who is inside the mother's womb or in an IVF lab before birth? And the best term to use is an unborn child. Okay, so they are a child, they are below the age of 18, but then they are not yet born, so they are unborn child. And our law recognizes the personhood of that person. And therefore, the whole Bill of Rights, all the rights that everybody who is born has, even the unborn child has. And the right to life is one of those. The right to the highest attainable standard of health is again accruing to the baby as far as I'm concerned as a doctor. Then Article 26(4) then states that abortion is not permitted unless, in the opinion of a trained health professional, there is need for emergency treatment, the life or the health of the mother is in danger, or if permitted by any other law. And what then we must be clear about is, what does that term abortion mean? Does it mean killing the baby? Or does it mean bringing a pregnancy to an end? And now we have just discussed that in the first part of this discussion, that medical ethics does not allow me to kill the baby. Okay? We have also agreed that bringing a pregnancy to an end, aborting, means bringing to an end prematurely. So the Constitution is saying bringing a pregnancy to an end prematurely is not permitted unless in the opinion of a trained health professional. Then we have the Health Act, 2017. I think it is in Section 6, where in the definitions they define abortion as the termination of a pregnancy before viability, when the baby can then live independent out of the mother's womb. So we are saying, if you're going to bring a pregnancy to an end before the baby is mature enough to live outside of the mother, then you must have a medical opinion. Okay? Then the Health Act also goes on to define who a health professional is. And they say is a medical doctor, they say is a nurse, a clinical officer, and a midwife. Now, health is very broad. Health, WHO defines health as the physical, mental, social well-being of a person, and not just the absence of disease or infirmity. So health goes beyond medicine, okay? But the Health Act has made it clear that the health professional that is being discussed in the Constitution then is a clinical person, is a medically trained person. Okay. So again, that solves the issue. You cannot give an opinion to terminate a pregnancy unless you're clinically trained, you're medically trained. Now, the Health Act also talks about the skill of the person. Okay, so the skill of the person must be such that they have been trained to the proficiency of terminating a pregnancy. Now, the skill of terminating a pregnancy, even you can be trained. If it's just a question of taking a class on how to terminate a pregnancy, you can teach anybody in the street, take this medicine, take it this way, do this, do that, and the pregnancy will come out. But the Constitution is talking about an opinion. And the only cadre of trained health professionals in this country who have been trained to the skill of giving an opinion as to which pregnancy can be terminated or not are the doctors. Okay. So my understanding is that any time a decision is going to be made that this pregnancy needs to come to an end for whatever reason, that decision must be made by a doctor. Okay. Now, if the doctor is not physically present, then the nurse, the midwife, the clinical officer can then call them. If they're not in this hospital because they're in the main hospital, You call them, you say this is what is happening, and they give you authority to go ahead and do the termination of the pregnancy. And you record clearly that I discussed with Dr. Wahome, he's a gynecologist. I have told him the history and he has given permission, and this is what. So that as far as the law is concerned, the final person who must take legal liability for terminating the pregnancy is the doctor.
Okay.
Now, if we understand that, we also understand that the mother cannot give that opinion. Okay, so if we go to the Malindi case, for instance.
Exactly, I was about to talk
yes,
about that.
It's a good one to look at. If we go to the Malindi case, this is a child who is the age of 16. I am not allowed to take care of a minor without the presence of the parent, because the minor is not allowed by law to give consent for any surgical or medical procedure. And therefore that child should have come to the hospital with the parent. So that's the first problem. The second problem is that the person who assisted in this procedure was not a medical doctor. Okay, so the first question to ask is, if the patient came bleeding, a 16-year-old came bleeding and she is pregnant, and she doesn't have her parents, the way we do it in medical practice is I would call another doctor and I would say, I have a minor here who needs emergency treatment, and the two of us can agree and give consent for that operation. Or if it is not another colleague, then a children's officer or something. The law is very clear. There must be somebody else who has legal authority to give permission for this procedure to be done. Now, if she had already started bleeding and there was no way of saving the pregnancy, then it is true that what that clinical officer did or the health professional did to clean out that uterus to save the life of the mother would be the right thing to do. But if, as the story would sound, that first she was given something to induce, to start the process of loss, and then came back bleeding, then it should be investigated to find out who gave her that medicine. Because first they made a decision to terminate the pregnancy. The child, even if it was an adult, so long as you have gone to a health professional and said what you said about your pregnancy, and he decided or she decided to terminate that pregnancy, you are not legally liable. You're not legally liable as the client. The legal responsibility now falls on the person who gave the opinion. Then we would ask, are you trained to the level of proficiency to give that opinion and say that this pregnancy should be terminated? And then we now come and we say, now as a doctor or as a clinical officer or as a nurse, tell us how you reached your opinion. And the way we reach our medical opinion is that we take a history, we listen to the patient. How are you feeling? What is it you're experiencing? Then you examine the patient, and then you do tests that if they are necessary, and you come up with a diagnosis. So you say, this pregnancy, the mother is bleeding, part of it has come out, part has remained. In medicine we call it an incomplete abortion, and therefore the treatment is to evacuate the uterus. You go and you remove whatever is remaining, and that is a very good medical decision. All right? Okay. But if you come and you say, the history is that this is a 16-year-old, she is pregnant, she's afraid that the mother will kill her, she's afraid that the father is going to send her away from home, she's very scared about what the pastor will say in the church.
That is the society pressure.
The society pressure. And there are all these things. What the whole society seems to be telling this child is that we don't want your baby. And it's a very bad thing that you're pregnant. Yes? And there is that pressure to get rid of this pregnancy. Now, if she comes to me with that complaint, then I examine her and I find that she's maybe even suicidal, she's threatening she'll commit suicide. So she is actually depressed. And she's depressed because she's been abandoned by the father of the child. She's worried about what will happen to her because society will condemn her. And I examined the pregnancy and I find it is a normal pregnancy. Baby is fine, growing well, there is no problem. Then my diagnosis would be that this patient is depressed with suicidal tendencies, but with a normal pregnancy. Now the treatment then is to treat the depression. It is not to kill the baby.
Right.
Do you understand? Yeah. So if we challenge that person and they tell us that they were worried about the psychological state of this woman, she was threatening about committing suicide and all that, then the question would be, is the treatment to kill her baby? You get? Yeah. So that's where the challenge comes.
Okay.
Now, it is important that we treat the condition that is a problem. Because even if you terminate that pregnancy and kill the baby, you did not remove, in fact, you have added more problems to the woman. There is a risk of physical harm, there is psychological harm.
Mental health.
You have brought in more problems, so you didn't solve the problem. And we have organizations that deal with that. It's called crisis pregnancies. Women will get pregnant sometimes when they had not planned to. Okay, and another myth we must discount is that pregnancy is a woman's problem. In fact, it is the man who should take greater responsibility, because a woman who gets pregnant has done exactly what she was designed to do, to receive this seed and actually create a baby for you. Yeah. When we make it a woman's thing, that's where the first place we begin with stigma. You're pregnant. What is wrong with you? The thing is that you're not pregnant alone. There is somebody who is the father of this child, and it should be taken as this couple is expecting a baby, and for whatever reason they were not well prepared. What do we do with them as a community? All right? And then we will be able to address the crisis. So we have a ministry that is called, they take care of and one of the most shocking stories we got from that team is a lady who had come from Rwanda. During the clashes, the issues, she had taken off through refugee camps and found herself in a refugee camp in Kenya. And during that time, she suffered sexual assault going through all these countries. And by the time she landed in Kenya, she was pregnant. And she wanted to terminate the pregnancy. She was taken into this center. So they provide the mother with food, they provide them with shelter, health care, safe delivery. Okay. And then because she got pregnant without wanting, this was not, in fact, she was sexually assaulted, then it would also be cruel to insist she keeps the baby. Okay. But the baby is innocent, so you don't kill it. But once she gives birth, then you must allow her not to take the parental responsibility of that child if she feels it is going to affect her mentally. And this child can then be given up for adoption. Okay. So when the baby was born and the opportunity was given for her to give up the baby for adoption, she changed her mind. And everybody was very surprised. And they tell us that when they asked her why, she said when she reflects on what had happened to her family, the killings that had happened in the villages she was running away, she realizes that this might be the only relative she has, the only living relative she has, and she decided to keep the baby. So the idea is that in those areas where pregnancy has happened when one is not ready, when they are very young, because of sexual assault, if we are to follow the law and medical ethics and not kill the baby, what we must also agree as a society is that we must not force that woman to keep the baby. That we would allow her to relinquish her parental authority, and we take this baby and give it to somebody else who is willing to look after them.
Okay, as we dwell on that, as you have mentioned about the sexual assault, that is rape, what about on the incest parts?
Yes, it's relatively the same. So first, let's look at rape, and we say that it is the worst form of defilement you can take a woman through, and you destroy her dignity, you destroy so many things. It is a very big psychological scar, and these women need a lot of psychosocial support. But let us ask who is to blame, and we must blame the society. There is no civilized society where a woman should be raped.
Okay.
And it is wrong, and it should not happen. So the first thing we do as a community is make sure our women are safe. That's the first thing we do. The second thing we do is that if it does happen, it's very important for the women folk to understand that because there are many things that can go wrong. There is that infection, there is sometimes there would be tears, there is damage to the genital systems. It's very important that the society understands that a woman who has suffered rape did not ask for it. Even if a woman has lost her mind and walks around naked in the market, she is not inviting anybody to have sex with her, and she must be respected as a person, so that there is no justification to take advantage of that woman. So we then, as a society, say that be very clear in our mind that any woman who says she has been sexually molested must be treated with a lot of empathy and must be treated with the dignity she deserves, and that if this is reported before 72 hours to a hospital, it is possible to collect evidence that would help us to prosecute the fellow who did this. It's also possible to give drugs and other things to prevent infections. It's easier to do repairs and other things when the damage is still fresh. And therefore it is very important for any person who suffers sexual assault, whether male or female, to report quickly to the hospital, so that to give us a chance to take care of the immediate damage and maybe collect evidence that would help in prosecution. Now, for that mother who unfortunately then conceives a child, then we have just discussed how we would be able to take care of her. That society that failed to protect her must take care of her during the time of her pregnancy and delivery using taxpayers' money, because they were supposed to protect her. And then she is allowed to give up the child for adoption. That way, because killing the baby will not reverse the rape. It will just add on to her even more psychological problems. So when we're dealing with brokenness, then we must be very careful that we don't give solutions that will make matters worse. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. And as we wind up on this conversation about abortion, and thank you very much for sharing your insight and perspectives. What would be your parting shot on the general view of this topic?
I think the most important thing is, let's be clear what we are saying. Let's not use terms and try and redefine things so that we cause confusion. The only people who thrive in confusion are the people who drive the abortion industry. It is very lucrative. The people who produce the drugs, the equipment, the what, and take care of all these complications that would come from it, don't mind it happening. So let's be clear that abortion is bringing a pregnancy to an end prematurely. Now, natural pregnancy will come to an end when the baby is term, and we say 38 weeks of pregnancy. Anything below that is considered premature, and the survival of the baby will depend on technological advancements. But anybody who is going to terminate a pregnancy before it has reached 38 weeks must be held to account, and they must demonstrate that they did this to save the life of the mother, or the life of the baby, or the life of both, and that the methods that they used actually gave the child a chance to survive. Yes.
All right, and let me ask you something, maybe you can talk about it. You mentioned about men should also be part of this pregnancy journey.
Yes.
What's your advice to the men out there?
The advice to men out there is that it is important we start looking at sexual intercourse from its spiritual perspective. That you're going to give seed that is going to create new life to a woman you have chosen to have a relationship with, meaning you're the one who has appointed her. She has agreed and has consented, and a child has come. It is your responsibility to bring up this child to the fullness of adulthood. And that is why you find that even today culturally, there are still communities that are very strong on that issue. Like the Luya community. You conceive a child, even if it is out of wedlock, that child is yours, it comes.
Very true.
And that is how we should approach this. Okay. As a young man, I made many mistakes myself. Okay. And the issue is lack of clarity in the responsibility of a man in terms of bringing a child to life. A woman who gets pregnant has done what she was meant to do. If we are going to say there is a problem, then it is the man who is involved that we should be asking, when you are having this sex and you knew a baby would come, what did you expect? Mm-hmm. Yes, so society must hold the men to account in as far as pregnancy is concerned, if we want to reduce the risk of these induced abortions.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Wahome, for that. And with that, I think we're going to wind up with a conversation. Thank you very much for making time and for sharing your insight and, of course, your experiences in your area of expertise, that is being a gynecologist. Thank you very much. We appreciate for your time and for sharing these insightful comments and views to our viewers. I'm sure they've learned a lot, and as I have, even to the women and men out there. And remember that the conversation like these help us better understand the diverse perspective that shape our society, as you have said about that. And also let us respect the human dignity, as that is the pro-life, of course. And with that, I don't have much to say, but thank you to all of you, the viewers, and of course the Capuchin TV crew that has been behind the scene. We have Asami Bor, Christopher Odhiambo, Peter Mwangi, and all of you, and of course Tobias. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for following up, and to you, Dr. Wahome. My name is Maureen Kimani. See you next time. Have a blessed day.
Enjoy this conversation with me, Maureen Kimani, every Friday from 9 a.m. on our Health Corner show here at Capuchin TV. Your health is your wealth. The Nazareth Sisters of the Annunciation is a women religious congregation that was founded to proclaim and witness God's love by empowering women, youth and children, especially the less fortunate.
This is a congregation that was founded in Meru by the late Right Reverend Victor Lawrence Besone, who was the first bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Meru, and he was a consolata missionary. At that time of the foundation of our congregation, it was a very tough time in our nation because it was the period of the Mau Mau, and he found it wise to begin this congregation so that the sisters would care for the women and the children who were so much marginalized at that time. We could see the women there suffering in the villages because the men were out there fighting. So this congregation of the religious sisters was founded so that we could cater for the needs of these women and children, not leaving aside the youth.
Since its formation, the congregation has witnessed remarkable growth.
The congregation has grown in numbers. Currently, the professed members are 189 and 26 for Miss. And it has reached to a number of dioceses. We're in Nairobi, Kitale, Lodwar, Marsabit, Embu, Isiolo, Nyahururu, and USA, Uganda, Tanzania, and of course, Meru, where is our mother house.
The sisters' lives are profoundly shaped by their charism, leading them to selflessly serve others with love and compassion.
Our charism is to proclaim and witness God's love among women, the youth, and the children with the spirit of the Holy Family of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. We empower women, and by this embracing the will of God and extending the services of Jesus Christ to save humanity by empowering women, the youth, and the children. We empower them through pastoral works, through social activities. Pastoral works, we take care of the sacrist. Sisters act as sacristans. We do home visit. We do couple counseling to empower these women in their families. Pastoral-wise, we work in health institutions. We serve in schools, in basic levels of education. We also serve in advanced levels of education like colleges and universities, so that as we continue empowering the women, the children, and the youth, we may have this touch in the society. We also find our sisters working in administrative places and duties. We have sisters who work in secretarial duties, so that as we continue empowering the children and the women, we may also extend our services to those people who are not near to us through our responsibilities.
On the 10th of August, the sisters will be commemorating the positive outcomes and impact of their efforts through commitment and sacrifices of their 13 sisters as they celebrate their first profession, perpetual vows, Silver Jubilee, and Golden Jubilee.
This is the time when our loving father founder, that is Lawrence Victor Bessone, celebrated his feast day. That is the feast of St. Lawrence the Deacon. He used to celebrate this day very much, and so he felt the need to receive the vows of the sisters on such a material day. And this is the reason why this falls on this very particular day of 10th of August. And now on 10th of August every year, we have these celebrations of the Silver Jubilee, the first profession, the final profession, the Golden Jubilee, and any other celebrations that come along. And so, this being the case, this year also, we have similar celebrations.
On this special occasion, the sisters extend a warm invitation to all of you to join in these celebrations.
I take this opportunity to welcome and invite all the guests who will be coming, parents of our sisters, brothers of our sisters, sisters of our sisters, relatives of our sisters, and all friends, and more particularly those that sisters have interacted with in one way or the other during the course of the evangelization, during the course of working, and also those that they have interacted with during the course of their lifetime as they celebrate different occasions, different steps in life. We pray that everybody comes.
As they mark this day, the sisters extend a special invitation to young women who feel that they have a calling to join them.
And more particularly want to invite even those that feel that they want to come and celebrate with us, our benefactors, all the friends of our congregation. You are all welcome. Mass will be at 10 o'clock in Consolata Primary School. For somebody to become a member of Nazareth Sisters or to join the congregation of the Nazareth Sisters must first of all have attained C-plane and if possible have a course in the relevant area of interest. This member also should be a practicing Catholic. Also must not have attempted marriage. Also must be somebody who is interested, who is willing to join the congregation. and if possible, somebody who has seen our charism and feels that she wants to express her way of life through our charism.
Let me take this opportunity to thank God for the fact that He has brought us as a congregation, and especially as we celebrate the achievement of our dear sisters in their religious life. I want to congratulate them, the sisters taking their first profession, those who are taking their perpetual profession, those who are celebrating their silver jubilee, and our dear sisters, our elders in the congregation, who are celebrating the golden jubilee. It's not an easy journey to reach this far, but it is the grace of God. So our dear sisters, we really appreciate you, we pray for you, and we celebrate this day with you, and we wish you all the best in your life and in the service of the Lord and His people.
For more information, contact the Nazareth Sisters of the Annunciation Vocation Office on 0790 547 439 or 0773 938 317. You can also visit our website info@nazarethsistersmeru.org. Keep watching Capuchin TV, your Catholic identity channel.
Kutoka jimboni, parokiani hadi vigango vyetu, runinga Capuchin inakuletea kipindi maalum cha paroko na parokia. Hizi ni baadhi ya parokia tulizoziangazia. Jimbo kuu la Nairobi, parokia Mtakatifu Benedetta eneo la Ngoingwa-Thika. Parokia Mtakatifu Matia Mulumba eneo la Makongeni Thika. Parokia Kristo Mfalme eneo la Kibra. Parokia Mtakatifu Teresa wa Avila eneo la Isili. Parokia Regina Cheli eneo la Karen. Parokia Moyo Mtakatifu wa Yesu eneo la Ngando Dagoretti. Parokia Mtakatifu Francisco Asizi eneo la Ruiru. Parokia ya Maria Mama Yetu wa Milima Karmeli eneo la Ngarariga Limuru. Parokia Mtakatifu Peter Clever katikati mwa jiji la Nairobi. Parokia Divine Word au Diwopa eneo la Kayole. Parokia Mtakatifu Katarina wa Alexandria eneo la South B. Parokia ya Utatu Mtakatifu eneo la Kariobangi. Parokia Kristo Mfalme eneo la Embakasi. Parokia ya Mtakatifu Yosefu eneo la Loreto Limuru. Na kanisa la Mtakatifu Francisco Asizi kwenye eneo la Muhoko. Katika parokia Kristo Mfalme eneo la Githurai 45. Jimbo kuu la Nyeri, parokia Maria Mama wa Mungu eneo la Mwega. Jimbo la Ngong, katedrali ya Mtakatifu Yosefu Mfanyikazi Ngong mjini. Parokia Mtakatifu Monica eneo la Gataka. Parokia ya Mama Yetu wa Fatima eneo la Ungacharongai. Parokia ya Bikira Maria Mtakatifu eneo la Ungacharongai. Jimbo la Nyahururu, katedrali ya Mama Maria Immaculata Nyahururu mjini. Jimbo la Bungoma, parokia Mtakatifu Maria Magdalena eneo la Kimatuni na parokia ya Moyo Safi ya Bikira Maria eneo la Bisiko. Jimbo la Eldoret, parokia Roho Mtakatifu eneo la Langas. Jimbo la Malindi, parokia Maria Mtakatifu eneo la Msaba. Jimbo la Meru, katedrali ya Mtakatifu Yosefu Meru mjini. Jimbo la Nakuru, parokia Mtakatifu Timoteo eneo la Total Molo. Parokia Mtakatifu Francisco Asizi eneo la Kiti. Jimbo la Machakos, parokia Mtakatifu Petero eneo la Makindu. Jimbo la Garissa, Katedrali ya Maria Consolata, Garissa mjini. Jimbo la Marsabit, Parokia Maria Immaculata, eneo la Logologo. Parokia Bikira Maria Mpalizi wa Binguni, eneo la Karare. Jimbo kuu la Mombasa, Parokia ya Msalaba Mtakatifu au kipenda Holy Cross kwenye eneo la Chani. Je, jimbo lako au parokia yako ipo?
Ungana naye Arbe Bonaya katika makala ya Paroko